Major League Journeymen. What a great conversation we have on deck. Luis Robles, the technical director of Major League Soccer's Next program, the youth initiative, joins the Journeymen to talk about an important, current, hot button topic of how we are developing our youth soccer players and the role that Major League Soccer is taking on. It's really insightful. Let's jump in. Major League Journeymen, how we doing, everybody? We took a week off to collect ourselves, get ourselves prepped for a really, really good discussion here. We have one of the all-time greats of our league, but also one of the leading minds in soccer development in the youth space in our country, in Luis Robles. Of course, we're joined.
I fully expected you to say Dax there. I did not actually think you were saying my name.
I can't call him a great mind. He's just a talking mouthpiece now. That's all Dax is anymore. He's just a talking head. No, Dax McCarty, obviously, joining us, and the other bookend, Alan Gordon. What a handsome devil he is. Luis, first and foremost, thank you for jumping on the pod. We really appreciate it. As the technical director of MLS Next now, I think that you have officially taken Gordo's theory of the league only hiring ex-New York Red Bulls and turned it from a conspiracy to a reality, because now it's not, I don't think that we can argue about it anymore. So let's start there. How did you
sorry that our Red Bulls teams had so many soccer minds that they needed to get us involved in the league. Sorry about that.
They're on to us.
What do you guys talk about around the water cooler? Like how valuable the supporter shield is, or what?
How valuable the supporter shield is, how our team camaraderie was at the top. No one could party like us at One Oak, after a win, okay?
Did you guys make a deal?
Best years of my life.
Is the MLS scripted? Did you guys sign a deal like, hey, you let Beckham win and in the Galaxy, and then we'll give you a job after your career's over?
No, I think that was Todd Donovan that signed that deal in the third CBA.
Exactly right.
Wow, we're starting strong, guys.
Starting hot. Coming in hot, Luis.
I love it.
No, in all seriousness, you are at the GA Cup, Generation Adidas Cup, which is, where is that, in Tampa? Is it Tampa this year?
It's at IMG Academy.
IMG. Okay, nice. So for our listeners that maybe don't know what the Generation Adidas Cup is, and also Alan Gordon, who obviously has no clue as well, could you just talk a little bit about, the teams that are participating, kind of how this has evolved and what it looks like right now?
Absolutely. So for Major League Soccer, it is the landmark event for player development, because it gives our MLS academies and the clubs within MLS Next an opportunity to match up against some of the big international youth academies around the world. So for us, here we have Bayern Munich, we have Palmeiras out of Brazil, Inter Milan, Santos Laguna, Club America. We have the champions from Korea, 16s and 18s, the champions from Japan, Tokyo FC. For us, we want to be able to not only showcase the growth that's happening within Major League Soccer and the player development space, but also benchmark our players' ability against some of the best players and future talents worldwide.
Dude, so it reminds me, Gordo, Dax, and Dax, you obviously spent some time in Dallas. Gordo, you grew up a soccer player. It reminds me of what we grew up wanting to go to the Dallas Cup and wanting to see the competition that was international, and you knew the best teams were going, at least from our country, but then also they were going to see whoever the outliers were that were coming over from international academies.
That just kept getting bigger. Right? I mean, I only heard about the Dallas Cup. My team was never good enough to be even invited.
Me neither. Never went.
The scrub group of the Dallas Cup, but there was that. What was that top level called, Gordon? Was it champions? Was it international?
I was with you. I never went.
Was anyone on this pod invited to Dallas Cup?
I was not.
I went to Dallas Cup a few times with the youth national teams, and I don't even remember what the division was. It was like the premier division or something like that.
Wait, so the youth national team participated in the Dallas Cup?
Absolutely.
Against clubs? Against international? Really?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there was there was top tier competition there, right, Dax? I mean, it was like Juventus, Inter Milan, like those.
Man United.
Man United, right?
Pepe Rossi played in the Dallas Cup for Man United, and so those were the types of youth teams that they were sending over, and it was all. It was cool, man. It was youth national teams that played. It was premier club teams from around the world, and then it was premier club teams from, you guys remember, before MLS Next and all these different cool youth initiatives started taking place. It was like the Dallas Texans, Nomads, Castle.
That was before youth soccer got incredibly confusing.
Yeah, Lufu.
Right.
Youth soccer back in the day was just like, hey, you go try out for this team. Maybe they're a big club, maybe they aren't. And then you just go and you play in these tournaments. And the better club you're a part of, the bigger the tournament you get invited to. Dallas Cup was the mecca. Like that was the big one, right? And it was also like, sorry, Adidas, but Nike friendlies as well. I don't know if you guys remember Nike friendlies.
Yeah.
These were the types of tournaments.
Again, things I've heard of, didn't participate.
Yeah,
Sounds like there's only one person on this.
You're talking to three other grinders here. We grinded our way through.
I like to think I have a balance of both. Okay.
The other event I remember was Adidas's ESP. Did you guys go to that?
Oh man, that was the best.
Yeah.
Right? Like 150 players. College recruiting, you would show up to your room and they just had this massive duffel bag of gear.
Yeah.
That probably, when I think about my youth, was the coolest event I went to.
That was like the differentiator, right? And it was so simple as 2 pairs of runners, a new pair of spikes, a sweatshirt, and a pair of sweatpants, and you were set. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Those were the events. But now MLS is you guys are taking on that mantle in so many different ways. You are obviously right alongside, I would say, one of the most significant decision makers, at least in the conversation. So when you think about kind of the trend of where youth soccer is heading, where do you see MLS in that space? So what role does MLS have now?
So this past year, we just launched an additional tier to what we're already doing. And I had an opportunity to speak with a lot of clubs that aren't currently within MLS Next. And during those conversations, there are 2 objectives that I continue to highlight. The first is to continue to grow the game. I think that's at the forefront, especially within that competition, that tier. And the second is get more players into the funnel. There's a lot of really cool initiatives. I know that quality play is one that has been highlighted recently, but even right now at Generation Adidas Cup, today is an off day for the players. And there's 100 coaches next door in the classroom learning in CPD. So Fred Lipka, he is the VP of player development at MLS, but he's also the main person when it comes to coaching education. And what we've done is we've utilized this event as an opportunity to invite more people into the space. And I love to see it wasn't just MLS academies, it's elite academies, but even more so, Dan, when we think about the clubs that are now joining us next year in 25-26, there's some of them in that room. And so for them to have never played a single game within MLS Next in our league, to now be exposed to this is about elevating the landscape, because the second objective, when we talk about getting more players into that funnel, is developing the next generation of talent. And the talent isn't just players. It's coaches, it's directors, it's admins, it's referees. And of course, the core of it is going to be players, but it's really just raising that tide for player development into the entire country. So that means that we're going to be among the leaders.
I like that.
Luis, let me jump in here, Gargs. I was super excited to sit down and talk to you first and foremost. So thanks for taking the time with us, man. I really appreciate it. I think that, from my perspective, like Garg said, just briefly, I'm taking the dad approach on this, because I know you were in conversations with Seth Tremblay. And it's so crazy how small our soccer world is. I'm talking to Seth, and Seth is coaching my oldest son here in Colorado. And we had, and you mentioned like how complex, Gargs deals with this on a daily basis, so he understands it. Dax has not even sniffed, how many levels there is to this thing. I guess my question is this. So our club had an EA, or was our top Elite Academy was our top tier for our club specifically.
Yeah.
Now, with all these different levels that is being rolled out, well, first, let me just ask you this: Can you dive into the kind of the competition between ECNL and MLS Next 2? Is that something that you can discuss and how that all came about? Because I know that MLS Next 2 is coming up in a big way and going to kind of support that MLS Next 1. Can you dive into that at all and how that kind of went down and how and why that was so important to you guys? Is that something you can address?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So when I played, especially when I was in that college age, I constantly looked to the left and the right as sort of like the Joneses and looking over the fence and seeing what other people are doing, what other people are getting. Why is this person getting a deal right away, or why is this person getting drafted? You're looking at other schools. And what it did is it just created a lot of anxiety for me. And it's something that I never really overcame until I was a few years in as a professional, maybe my 6th or 7th season. I was approaching 27, 28, where I just stopped worrying about everyone else. And I just was focused on my process, laser focused, if you will, and just stay above any sort of anxiety, any sort of noise. And so this is the same sort of strategy at MLS Next that we're taking on, understanding that we're looking to grow the game. We're not looking to cannibalize the game. There's people in the space already. They're doing a great job. And so what we're laser focused on are those objectives. How do we grow the game, find people that are growing the game that want to join us, and then we want to get more into the funnel, because this is about development. And this is also what makes us unique is that we're the only league in the United States that is attached directly to a professional league, right? In that sense, I know that there's some that are just starting and they're creating that pathway, but that's what it is the pathway. And so when we look to add more teams, it's not a revenue play. It's not let's just do it for the sake of doing it. It has to be laser focused on how do we grow the game, but also introduce them into the initiatives, the objectives, what we're doing in that space. And so when I think about Seth specifically, there's a few Seth Tremblay situations. It's guys who have played in the league. The game has given so much to them, and they've now turned around and said, I want to give back. I want to make this better. And when we were going through that recruiting phase, when I would come across Patrick Nyarko or Blaise Matuidi or John Harkes, these are guys that I understood that they were going to advocate for the player development space, because that's what it is player development means that you're going to make mistakes. It's not only going to be about wins or losses. It's about how do we get that and activate that connection in a real way to get more of those people to the top level. And I'm not saying that that's what makes us different. I'm just sharing with the group here is that's what we're looking to do. And as we had those conversations, we started to find more people who want to be a part of that. And okay, these are the partners that are going to be a part of it, knowing that it's not going to be perfect in year one. And that's what I said to Seth. It's like, Seth, you may not get everything that you want, but the reason I'm excited about Colorado United and you being within this pathway, within this ecosystem, is I already know the experience that you're going to bring. But for your club, there's now a roadmap to be whatever you want to be. So they're coming in to that new tier, but there's certain criteria that we evaluate all our clubs because there will be adjustments. So if Seth wants to be at the top, if he wants to be among the best competition, he now has that. Whereas previously before this, there was a disconnect that didn't exist. And so that to me is actually one of the more exciting bits of it, is that we're going to have more Seth Tremblays in the league. But for clubs like Colorado United, there's a pathway to getting to whatever they want.
Are you essentially saying, just one quick follow-up for me, are you essentially saying that instead of having all these different separate entities like Elite Academy and ECNL and ECNRL and MLS Next, that you're bringing in another tier, another level to MLS Next, who is basically just adding to your player profile that you can identify more players and it being kind of streamlined because it's the same entity?
In one sense, but I think there's also the other side of the coin. And that's just to simplify the process. So I think one of the biggest gifts that we can give families is clarity, because with all the different leagues that are out there and their son or daughter joins and they're trying to understand how do I get to there, I think in the end, what a lot of families want is just to feel like their child had a chance to be seen. And so instead of just making exclusive to it has to be the top, like, first off, I don't think Major League Soccer could do that. I think Major League Soccer as a product, as a league, should be catering to all viewers, to all fans, to all demographics. And within those demographics, some have kids that play soccer. And we want to be able to give them an opportunity to be a part of what we're doing. So now there's an even more organic connection to the game. It's not just about watching the Colorado Rapids or LA Galaxy. It's, well, no, my kid is a part of this, and now my kid has a chance to get there. And if we can give some clarity on what that pathway looks like, I also think that that's a real positive byproduct of what we're trying to do.
Luis, I think that's extremely helpful. And I agree with what you're saying in a lot of different ways. I appreciate you, I think, articulating that first by starting with, this not being a revenue play. I see that. I also think that that's important to say, especially in this space right now, right? I think that it's much longer term play for the league. Specifically, if they're bringing in soccer players, which is their market, then they're creating lifelong fans, right? That would be the ideal for them. Now, obviously, you're giving back a service to connect and simplify and provide clarity within what that player pathway may or may not look like, right? For everybody. I think that we probably need to go back just a couple years.
And so, Dan, sorry, I have to cut you off there. That right there is an hours-long conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, we can dive into that in deep layers. So I agree, and not to gloss over it. And what I was going to touch on was, the fact that MLS has stepped up and has done this in a very short amount of time, to be fair. In U.S. Soccer and the DA, Development Academy, essentially folding during COVID, right? Deciding that they weren't going to be the provider for this pathway for the elite soccer. MLS stepping in, and I think that at least it's discussed that there was a plan there, but that plan essentially was moved up in terms of a timeline very, very far ahead of what was initially expected by Major League Soccer. Major League Soccer is in an interesting spot because they do have a product, right? They are a league. They're not necessarily a governing body, but they're also the preeminent voice in soccer in this country. And I think in a lot of ways, more influential than U.S. Soccer is, and taking on some of that mantle. I wonder, when you guys have these bigger conceptual conversations, like where does this go? Because there is still so much clarity left to be shared, right? Because of the things that we were talking about, just how obvious it was on how you progress. Now, within that, at our age, we had State Cup, we had regionals, we had the national championship, US, right? It was straightforward. And you have the Dallas Cup, and you have the Nike Friendlies, and you have Adidas ESP. There was clarity there. But there was also a sport that was really kind of just getting going in a lot of ways. The numbers were nowhere near what they are now in terms of participation levels. But you also had literally probably hundreds of thousands of players that didn't get seen, right? Mm-hmm. So when I think about this, it's exposure to whatever's next, and that could be a real professional pathway. It could also, and probably more importantly, be college exposure, because that, for the majority of these kids, is where they'll end up, even if they're lucky enough, right? Mm-hmm. And then obviously,
even that's a percentage, right?
Even that's a percentage, absolutely. And then, third, which is probably the biggest percentage, is a positive experience. Yeah. So I want to go back and just ask maybe again, where you guys, when you have these conversations, what type of responsibility do you feel as MLS, speaking for MLS, in that role, in reshaping this dynamic? Because you do sit on one side where you're a piece of it, right? You're a piece of the ecosystem. But I don't think it's lost in anybody's minds that you are the most integral and most powerful piece of the ecosystem at this point.
So that's definitely your perspective, right? I think that's important to share that because it is a shared space.
Yep.
And within that space, there's just different entities that have varying levels of influence. And so I actually want to start on the back end of what you said because I couldn't agree more. 100% of the people that come into our ecosystem, we have to deliver a positive experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then within that, there's those players that will get exposure that up until now was maybe a fraction of what we can give. And so with all these new players coming in, we want to increase that percentage. We want everyone to feel like they're getting a chance to be seen by either MLS Academy scouts, MLS first team scouts, colleges and universities, and then national teams. And so when I think about the pyramid, it was only a couple years ago that MLS introduced Go. And the reason for it is we wanted to keep the game accessible, meaning it's local. We wanted to keep the game affordable. So that's why we started partnering with nonprofits like Boys and Girls Clubs, state associations. And then the third piece is we want to keep it fun because that's where the base of that pyramid is. And that could be millions, right? It's tough to have accurate data on it. But what it is a lot of people play soccer. And we know that, like, for example, my wife, she was an athlete and she played soccer for like 1 or 2 years. The fact is she like played it. Was she ever going to be serious about it? No. So the most important thing is she had a good experience.
Right.
She had fun. When I coached my son's team at U10, my only objective was that every player that I had that year had so much fun they want to play next year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? Like I did not want to be the reason why a kid stopped playing soccer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And unfortunately, I did not achieve my objective. One kid stopped playing soccer.
Oh, no.
His dad,
it happens, dude.
Incredible. He said, look, my son, he's going to be a baseball player. I was like, all right, cool. All right. I appreciate that. I mean, I failed in my objective, but that's all good.
I lost my son's best friend, that I coached for like 6 years, and he left. It was tough.
Hopefully your son's gracious.
Yeah.
But do you understand what I'm saying, Dan? Is like, okay, so that's that piece, that positive.
I do. Yeah.
And that is most people. And now from an MLS perspective, how can we, within the influence that we have in the space, accomplish that? Keep it fun, keep it affordable, keep it accessible.
Mm-hmm.
But then above it, there is this space that is a lot harder to interpret. Is it travel? Is it club? I mean, I think when we grew up, it was called select, and then it changed to club, and then it changed to academy, and then, I play for an academy. What does that mean? It sounds cool. I want to be a part of that.
Yep.
That space is a lot more difficult to interpret. But then, Dan, to what you said is when the DA stopped its operation and MLS Next came in, it really became that youth space. Mm-hmm. And then above that is you have the pro game, which is Major League Soccer. And then above that, you have the national teams. And so I think it is one of the core tenets of what Major League Soccer should and is doing is to serve everyone that we just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And so now Next has an opportunity to expand and get closer to serve more of those people.
Luis, I love how you kind of tied all that together. And you said, look, obviously we're here to serve everyone, but you mentioned the national team. And I want you to kind of go into detail about this new quality of play initiative that you guys have just kind of introduced and kind of just give us the macro overview of that. But then on the back end of that, I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit. We talked a lot about player pathway right now. I'm curious about player profile and this idea of, do we as Americans have a player profile? You know what I mean? Like, you look at Brazil, they have a player profile. Like, it's innate in their blood, right? You even look at Germany and kind of how Klinsmann kind of reassessed everything with the German Federation and what they were looking for in terms of how they can make the national team better. I say this out of love for my fellow journeymen, but how can we as a country, and specifically MLS, create less Dax McCarty, Dan Gargan, Alan Gordon, and more Diego Luna?
And less Luis Robles, you can say that too. Like
no,
Allison Becker, we want to.
But we need more. We need more rocks. We are the rocks. We are the foundation, Dax.
We will always be the foundation, and that's great, but we don't need 95% of the players that we are developing to be the foundation. We need 60% to be the foundation, and we need, 35, 40% to be like, hey, this is a kid that is a game changer, a Diego Luna. Like, we don't create enough of these types of players. And so that's a very long question, but quality of play initiative, player profile for the American player.
Yeah, they're all connected, and that's what Taka is. So Taka is our development partner, and how that journey started is we need a video exchange. The video is where the clubs, whether they use VO or Speedio or there's so many options in space now. Huddle, you upload it to the exchange, and now coaches can watch. They can watch games. But at 28 years old, 29 years old, when I was at the Red Bulls, was really the first time that we had access personally to video. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to me, I can attest that it allowed me to take a huge step forward in my game. I had to watch my mistakes. And there was something even about that personal development that allowed me to be more confident, more courageous, which developed into being a better leader, which had an impact on the team. And so when I think about my own personal development,
video don't lie, right? Like that was always the one. Well, yeah, we'll watch the tape on Tuesday. We'll see whose decision was actually the correct one.
Exactly, and it's crazy how you have a different recollection in the moment of what happened in the game, and then you watch video and like, oh, okay, what was I doing? Hopefully, I'm on the starting lineup next week. Right? And so I wanted to be able to give that to our players. And I think that's where this journey started is, there's a video exchange. It's great. Dan, cool. Coaches can watch. What about players? Like, why not be able to give that to players? And then as we started going down this journey, as we selected Taka to be our development partner when it came to video and analysis, we started to understand more of what they could do. And so now that's the tough part about player development, and that's the tough part about Major League Soccer. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. Mm-hmm. It's not one thing is going to make the players better. Yeah. It's not one thing is going to make the league better. It's not one thing is going to make our coaches better. It's going to be a bunch of different things. And so what we've been able to do is we've been able to address a few of those in varying ways. Now there's a video exchange. Everyone can watch it. Now coaches have access to video like they've never had before. Now players have video like they've never had before. But now within their profiles, what Taka's done is through their analysts, and it's a group of analysts out in Europe. They watch every single game. It takes 4.5 hours for them to clip the game, to analyze it. They can code it so that now the players can watch their clips. They can watch whatever they want to watch. And I think to me that's the key part. And so through all of that is how we get to the quality of play, which we can go into. But Dax, I just want to share that in the very beginning, in order for us to even get to this phase, it started to ask questions like, why wouldn't we want players to watch video? Why wouldn't we want coaches to have more access? And so now going to the profile piece, I don't know what the American profile is right now, because if I ask you guys, we'd all say what it used to be. It's that hard working, that grinder, that rock. And so then we almost started to disdain that. Like we looked down on that.
Yeah, which doesn't make a lot of sense, like why that's invaluable anymore.
Right. And so then when we are starting to get more of those players, we then negatively are like, what happened to those guys? So then you start to realize it's both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, where's your perspective and where are you going to place priority? So for us at MLS Next, we realize that we can't prioritize the coaches over the players. We can't prioritize the players over the coaches. We can't prioritize the experience over the parents. So it's slowly, okay, this is one thing that we want to do for one person, but if we do it right, then maybe we can find applications for others. And so it started with the coaches. It's now the players. And so now through quality of play, and maybe that's something that is a marketing experience, maybe quality of play is misleading, because it's not subjective in the sense of what was the quality. It's actually effectiveness. So for example, with Lou Foos, by the way, Dan, congrats. You guys have a very high quality of play rating in the youth.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Tell him that.
There's some good work being done over there.
I'll tell you what, our coaching staff does a fantastic job. They pour into it. We try and give them obviously as many resources as we can. We're a youth amateur club, but you try and do it, just to what you said, Luis. Like, there's a reason why Premiership clubs have 20 coaches on their bench, because you can pick any number of things and pour more time and effort into it, right? It's all about money and time. So we try and give as much as we can, but I think it's a cool.
And even that, they're still short of time.
And you're still short, right? You still can't get there.
We've already clipped it for them.
Right.
It's a major investment for Major League Soccer. Why? Because we realize that we are in the best position to capitalize on the upside, but that's downstream. Mm-hmm. And so that means that we're going to have to make investment now. And it's funny, like, we're on the other side of it, but I've been in CBA negotiations with you guys, right? As players in that moment, it really was the owners over here and we're over here and we got to fight for everything. And it always felt like we always came a little bit short. But the longer we're in the game and as the game continues to evolve and as Major League Soccer continues to grow, and now we're on the other side, we look back and I'm grateful for what they went through in the first 30 years. And now I want to be a part of the next 30 years to continue to make it better. But like, if it wasn't for, I don't think we'll ever completely understand their situation, but if it wasn't for them continuing to take on those losses to keep the league up, we wouldn't be here right now talking about it. Mm-hmm. And so in the same sense, in the player development space, there's this ongoing conversation of like, how much can we invest? And we're very fortunate that even though it is a hot button topic within the owners, they continue to push forward. We have to invest. We have to invest. And that's what player development is. It isn't instant gratification. It's understand the process, planting the seed, and eventually down the road, the harvest will come, but it takes time.
So I can speak specifically to some of the quality of play stuff that you mentioned. With Fuse, so our 13s and 14s are participating in this, right? So you rolled it out for the U13 and U14 age groups. I wanted to ask you to talk through, I'll ask you the tough question. How do you avoid some of the misses just in conversation? Like I feel like, we're Eminem battling Papa Doc. I know everything that you're going to say, right? When, removing different styles of the game, turning players into triangles, like, how do you just skip past that to get through some of the obvious conversation topics to get to what you ultimately want to achieve, which is giving certain, intangibles to these players that they maybe haven't had access to? How do you manage that process?
So there's two parts to it. The first is we're going to miss. We just have to be okay with it. But there is an active feedback loop. And so coaches can go in right away and say, or players can email right away. They can message within the platform, hey, this wasn't me, or a goal is missing. Like, we're going to miss. But the second piece of it is it's not AI. It's a human being with a scouting background. Okay. And so what we give direction and what we're looking for is we want to find the Diego Lunas. So if someone takes a player on, it doesn't work out, that's not a negative. We want that.
Good.
What we don't want is the center back passing the ball to the center back, back to the center back, back to the center back. Because there will be a portion of it, maybe down the road, that it could lead to a chance. But the biggest moment of significance in a game is what?
The goal. Chances created.
The goal, right? But then if you pull it back, is the chances created. Then you pull it back, it's like, how did he get there? And you pull it back, it's like, these are those moments in the actions. But we also know that isn't the entire game. And so now, Dan, I'm going to speak directly to what you were saying about before. There's a common misconception that MLS Next is just MLS Academies. Mm-hmm. And that's not true.
Right.
MLS Next currently is 151 different clubs around the continent, North America and so Canada and the United States.
Yep.
Within the 151, 29 are currently MLS Academies. So that means 122 are elite academies.
Right.
Of the MLS Academies, those coaches, to be a coach is their full-time job. To be a director is their full-time job. At the under 22 elite academies, there's varying degrees of what full-time is. Mm-hmm. And so for some of those clubs, they may have full-time coaches. Amazing. That's great. That's a different model. We don't prefer that model. We don't discriminate against that model. Some clubs, one coach is coaching 4 teams and has a full-time job and has a family. So we have to support them. And that's why Taka and breaking down the video is great for them, because they're not going to have that extra time. But their players need video. And it needs to be part of the conversation. And the other conversations we're having is best practices. What does it look like for an MLS Next Elite Academy to operate efficiently? But in the meantime, until we get to there, I think it's our responsibility, the same way we said the U.S. national team in the pro space, how do we support those coaches that's working a 9 to 5, but their passion is to develop players. And when they get to the field, they didn't have time because they have 2 kids that are in diapers and they're married, and there's just so many other responsibilities. And yet they have a responsibility of developing players. Okay, how can we step into the space and help them? Well, through Taka, through quality of play, through the initiative, we're breaking down the video for them. So they have the opportunity now to speak to it with their players. And that's what we want, right? We can't force that, but it's what we want. And that's the culture. And this is why we have 100 coaches next door is, hey, when I opened up, I said, growth mindset. Up until the day that I retired, I thought I could be a better goalkeeper. Today, better than I was yesterday. And what I learned once I got past 30 and 32 and 34 is that meant a lot of it wasn't on the field. It was watching video. It was having conversations.
Adding more layers to your game, right?
Exactly. And that's what we're trying to bring. And this is why I brought up the owners, is the ones who are fielding that cost right now are the owners. But let's also call a spade a spade. If this goes well, they get to maximize on the upside of that development.
Luis, it sounds to me like, so for me, it makes me think about my days in the MLS. And what was the system that they implemented that we could watch video? Well, do you guys remember?
I think in the beginning, wasn't it like
you remember Dax?
Tech or Huddle or Y Scout?
It was something like that. And it was
Y Scout.
Y Scout, yeah.
That's right. So I was one of those guys that didn't take advantage of it. My coaches would come up and be like, "You have 0 views." And I'm like, "Well, I don't."
Shocked to hear that. Really, I gotta say, Gordo, shocked.
I don't really like to watch myself play soccer.
I don't have a computer, coach.
Let me just be honest. It doesn't. It doesn't do it for me.
My girlfriend wrote my papers. I didn't need a laptop.
I wish I would have. Let me just go bump into somebody really hard. So, with that being said, is this a way? Because you guys are investing a ton of money into the system that can be very beneficial for the kids. I sit down and I watch Veo with my son, or I try to, right? And show him what I'm trying to tell him on the field. Is this your way of almost forcing people to use the technology that you guys are investing in? So you're basically saying, we know you're not going to watch it. If we just continue to play games where goals matter and teams just want to win or whatever, you're not going to watch it. Is this your way of saying we're gonna help you watch? So
Gordo, you're talking about forcing the education, like the educational component.
Yes, is that what you guys are trying to do?
By valuing it,
right?
Yeah,
and saying
forcing is definitely not the word I would use.
Forcing. No, I mean
encouraging, strongly encouraging,
strongly encouraging. Right? Like I wrote we had some intercultural training yesterday with all our academy directors, the MLS academy directors. And when I wrote the email to them, I said, I strongly encourage you to show up. Like, I can't say like it's mandatory. I can't say it's required. I'm forcing you to show up. You're going to get fired if you don't. So there's words you can use like strongly encourage, and there's a culture that you can have where you strongly encourage. And in order to do that, you have to be able to provide. It's one thing to ask people to do it. It's another thing entirely to provide them the resources to do it. And that's what we're trying to do. And,
so that's okay. So that's pretty accurate. Right?
It's just like a session,
you use that
right?
example, because part of the product that we are providing for families, it has been deduced from my own personal experience. So my son is U13. He plays in MLS Next in New Jersey. And when we look at when we look at the video on YouTube or VO, however it was recorded, there's just like so much scrubbing that you have to do to get to that moment. And so I'm literally thinking about how can I create a better experience for the dad or the mom who's in bed and they're tucking their kid in and like, hey, let's pull up the game. Because that's when my son and I are watching it. He's about to go to bed because I have this rule. There was a study that came out, I don't know how many years ago, where the NCAA asked 3,000 student athletes, what was the most negative part of your experience as a young athlete? And nearly 3 out of 4 said the ride home.
Yep.
I know.
Right? The ride home.
Guilty. I'm getting better. I'm better.
But so I've, even within myself, had to fight it. Like, do not bring up the game, right? If I bring it up, did you have fun? Like, Eli, did you enjoy the game? Emily, did you enjoy the game?
Yeah.
Is there something about it that you enjoyed the most? And then let's go get ice cream. Let's let it be. It was their experience. It wasn't my experience. But later in the week, that's when I'm going to force them, right? Like, later in the week is when I want to talk about it because
I'm strongly encouraging you to stay awake for another 12 minutes so we can run through your clips here.
Exactly. But there's the other thing is I also know we're in a TikTok generation. So that's why the clips are 10 to 15 seconds is how do we create the most value for them? And again, I think it's everything that we're doing at MLS Next. And again, I'm going to now try to separate myself from MLS because it is a different audience. Everything that we're doing comes through the lens of what's best for the player. That if we have anything that's gray, like should we do this, should we do that? We just take a step back and we say, what's best for the player here? And if that means that it costs us more, that's fine. Because again, we have to develop that next generation. Like it is upon us and it actually impacts our business to develop that next generation. But I also think it impacts this country when we want to be a country that wins the World Cup, when we want to be a soccer country that compares to others. And now that's the other part is like I separated it, but now that's the role that I play. It's funny when you say technical, like I was a goalie. I don't think anyone on this call is like, oh, he's the technical person. What I am is someone who's experienced this and am very motivated to make MLS the best league in the world, to make MLS Next the best development space in the world, to help our national teams compete for the U.S. men's national team to win. We have a lot of catching up to do with the girls. And so I have to remind internally, hey, this is why we do it. All right. Because you can get lost in the minutia. You can get so myopic in the way that you think. And I just got to pull it back. It's like the reason why we're doing this. And even when we started the coaching summit, we have international coaches in there. I said, we want Major League Soccer to be the best league in the world. And so this is part of it.
Yeah.
It's not the answer. Look, quality of play is not going to be the reason why we win. MLS Next is not going to be the reason why we win. Increasing the coaches or adding more teams is not going to be the reason why we win. But they are parts of a puzzle. And that player development puzzle is a complicated one. And so we have to find the right pieces as we put it all together.
That's well said. Hey, quick follow-up from me. And I bet you Dax was going to ask the same question, maybe Gargs, because the only thing on my mind right now is because I'm the dad with some experience in my club. And so everybody comes to me like, hey, what does this look like? So can you give us, you don't have to go into extreme detail, but can you give us just a basis understanding of how the quality of play will dictate games? Like, do goals still count, for example? And I want to know, like, okay, if these guys are breaking down film and it takes them 4 hours, when do you know when you won the game? Is it next week? Does everybody walk off the field and then you send like a report and then you send it out? Can you give us just a basic understanding? Because I mean, you've done a great job here. And I wish all the parents around the nation and every club could hear it, because it's important to hear your voice, because you can hear the genuine, what's the word, Dax? Genuinity. You're genuine and what
there
you're
it
saying. And you have kids. You know what I'm saying? So can you give us just a basic understanding of how they will break down these games and the quality of play?
Luis, before you go into that, Dax and I were talking about this. Dax, couple onto that with what your thought about, in the future, just so Luis can kind of tie all this together.
I was just curious, man, like 10 years from now, when you reflect on this initiative and you're sitting there in your MLS commissioner's chair, how, like,
Oh man, yeah.
like Luis,
Dax has said that since the day we met. This is no real bearing.
He really knows how to butter up a guy, doesn't he?
Trajectory. If he wants me to side with him, he says something like that. So.
Luis, I just want to know what success looks like. How do you measure success from this initiative 10 years from now?
So you're coupling on to what Dan said, or to Alan said.
Forget about what I said. They didn't like my question.
I did like your question. I actually think it's connected here because you're talking about putting qualitative metrics onto a game and not necessarily. And this is probably going to be me oversimplifying. So Luis, please correct me here. Qualitative metrics into a game and maybe lessening the value of what the score line is to encourage certain actions, to encourage certain styles of play, which then I think connects to, okay, this is obviously not going to happen today or tomorrow. We're starting this process. And Dax wants to know, in 10 years, what would you really want to have out of this over that course of a decade?
That was really good because that's what it is. It's an aggregation of all the moments of significance. And as we talked about, the most significant moment in a game is when a goal is scored or when chances are created. And yet, those have the most weight because they end up being the most significant. But you don't want to lose all the buildup to it either. You don't want to lose the run that a winger made or the recognition that an outside back made to see the run. Like, we're able to capture that. Why? Because an analyst is looking at it. We want to reward those breaking line passes, whereas traditional data will say like it didn't come off. Like, I think this is also one of the reasons why Dax was so successful is, and I actually tell my son this, is you have to be able to turn and you already have the pictures behind you because then you're springing the ball. And he wasn't successful because he did it 100% of the time. He was successful because he did enough times in enough moments that it helped the team. So how do we capture that? Because traditional data will say he had a 64% completion rate.
Right.
But for us, that's success. Like, if he did it,
that's the worst stat.
2 out of 3 times, and it led to a goal, like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily, because there's just, that's why it's so sophisticated, is by doing this, we've introduced a competition, so that can't be lost either. Because what Dax said is, what does success look like in 10 years? Well, we're hoping by doing this, coaches are very mindful of the way that they're developing our players. We don't want the players to be so concerned with it. We want the coaches to be concerned because they're the ones that are influencing this. How are they making the players better? But on the back end, this is the other part is, I'll ask you guys, what role does competition play in player development?
I think it's a big aspect.
I think it's huge.
Like Luis, players have to learn how to fail in order to grow. I just fundamentally believe that. And I don't even have kids that are old enough to play yet, but like, you have to learn at a young age how to fail, or else when you get older, you're never going to be able to handle adversity in a way that's going to make you better. So the younger you learn it, the better you'll be. So the competition aspect of it, it has to also be there, but not to the point where coaches are throwing development out the window for the sake of results. That can't happen.
I do think that the weight of competition increases as kids get older because of the process that they're going through, but I also don't believe that you can remove it completely from the youngest ages. In the position that I sit in, Luis, in seeing this broad spectrum and the depths of the highest talent and the lowest talent that is just participating in the game, some of the things that are discouraging are how strongly parents and the overall periphery that are watching the game prioritize the result of a U7 soccer game. That is not, I don't want to say it's meaningless, because it's not meaningless, because it means an awful lot to the players, but prioritizing that to the point where it becomes not fun. for the kids and not fun for the referees, which are a real issue right now. Parents and sideline and fans berating the referees, which happens at every level, but it's a lot louder when there's 30 people there and you're not in a stadium, right? But I do think that it's interesting you guys putting this quality of play at the 13s and 14s, and I also think that it will be interesting with how you still maintain the idea of competition and prioritize, a result at the end of the day as well.
Gordo, what are your thoughts?
I'm with these guys. They said it really well. I love the competition piece because I think that the reason that we were successful, and I played with, 2 out of 3 of you, and I played against you a lot, and I know what an intense and a competitor you were because I saw it first and foremost. I think that's one of the most important pieces is learn how to be a competitor and an intense competitor. However, to Dax's point, I think player development needs to be the focus, and how can we do both at the same time?
Yeah, so 4 out of 4, we agree. And 4 out of 4 on this call have backgrounds in the sport, right? We play at the highest level. We had varying degrees of success, but we can all agree that when we look at our journey, it is very difficult to extract what competition did to our development. And so I'm not an expert in this field. There are people that have more reference points, that have done more research, more analysis, more data to support.
Yeah.
But what I am is a culmination of my experiences. And at 13 years old, at 14 years old, I don't remember all the tournaments. I don't remember the results, but I remember State Cup. I remember competing. And whether or not we made it to the next round, or I remember ODP and Arizona ODP playing against other states. And so you see what I'm saying? It's like I remember glimpses of it, and I think that's what it is. It's how do we prioritize the phases? Because 13s and 14s is different than 15s and 16s, is different than 17s and 19s. So it's really what all of you guys said. And so now through this quality play initiative, we have introduced a competition, but it is the phase during the regular season. Focus on developing those players. Focus on being more effective in the way that you grow them and develop them. And then there will be a point where your ranking comes out, and that's how you get invited to the competition. And so when I look at the ranking, I saw that Lou Foos is top 3 in their division. I actually don't even know what their wins or losses are. To me, what that story says is they have a good group of players, that the coaches instilled a process to develop them, and they're probably getting results. But to me, I see the ranking. I'm like, oh, that's all right. They're doing well there. Let's make sure that they get invited to the competition, because the other part, going back to the profile piece, Dax, like I don't know what the American profile is right now. I think we are in transition, but what can never be taken out of it is this insatiable desire to want it more than the next person, to compete and just be a killer on the field.
Yeah.
That can never be taken away. And we can introduce that in the right moments in certain age groups, but it's always a part of what we're doing in the development space.
Luis.
Sorry. The MLS Next development space. There's a development space at 6-year-olds. It does not matter. Just go get ice cream. The only thing that matters is what flavor ice cream you're going to get. But in the MLS Next U13 through U19 space, it plays a factor in those players.
Yeah.
Like really, you see your generation Adidas Cup. You can't tell me it doesn't matter to these
Yeah,
players.
I mean, we watched a kid that was in our club, Mav Scott, goalkeeper, Luis, on St. Louis City's U16s, took down Bayern Munich yesterday in PKs. So their group advanced. Fantastic for the club, fantastic for the city, fantastic for the league, I think, and probably really good for Bayern to come over and get humbled in their journey as well, right? To come over and lose to an American side is awesome to see. Really, really insightful chat, Luis. As a soccer dad, as a friend, as a competitor, all of the above that we've shared spaces with. I can certainly say I feel great about the position that you're in influence within this game, and obviously in the league office and the headquarters. I think you said a couple things that really stood out to me. the desire to be the best in the world from a youth league, I think is a differentiator, right? We talk about MLS as a whole wanting to shoot for maybe a top 4 league in the world. To be able to say and have confidently say that we have aspirations to be the best in the world, that's fantastic. I mean, I couldn't be more excited and encouraged to hear that come out of your mouth, because I can't imagine it's the first time that you've said it. And also that means that it is in your conversations that you guys have when you think about a bigger picture, which is great. I think the other thing that I heard is, we have to develop the next generation. And I would go back to strongly encouraging you as Major League Soccer to take another step, because I do think, yes, it is my perspective, but I also think that the perspective of the majority of soccer individuals in this country are certainly seeing the influence and strength and position that Major League Soccer is in. And I do think that, having been in it for as long as I have been now, in terms of the youth space, we do really need an advocate and a leader and somebody that is pushing that and collaborating, and certainly taking, all bits and pieces and putting it together, but taking and making some of the difficult decisions that a leader has to do. So I hope that you guys continue on your path there.
I appreciate you saying that. And even just being at Generation Adidas Cup, where I'm encouraged to be able to fail with courage, to be able to be confident in the learnings, and to be consistent in our approach, is when I walk around and I see all the guys that I either played with or played against. Mm-hmm. They're just in different roles. Some are agents, some are in TV, some are doing development work, some have their own business, right? They're just in that space and they're advocating for what we're doing. Strength in numbers is a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah.
That's really encouraging to see. We want to see more of it, and I want to provide more opportunities to give former players the chance to be a part of it as well.
That's awesome, man. Well, on behalf of the Journeymen.
Thank you, Luis.
Yeah, you earned another advocate over here in Colorado from a mortgage guy that coaches more than I sell mortgages. I got your back, buddy.
Thank you, Gordo. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Hey, and enjoy the rest of the cup, and good luck with everything moving forward. We'd love to have you back on sometime in the future.
I'd love to be on. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Luis.
See ya.